You are watching the New American Media. Hello, Milky Way Galaxy. Hello, Solar System. Hello, Planet Earth. Hello, North America, the United States, California, Los Angeles to be specific. That's where we're broadcasting from, but we're going all over the place as far as the internet will take us. This is the newamericanmedia.com because the news always matters. Thank you for joining us today. It feels so good to be back. Said it on my last show, and I mean it now. It is very good to be back over the holiday break. Got a lot of work done, but now it's time to get back into the news and what's going on. What you're listening to in the background is Johnny Rabb, one of the sickest drummers on the planet, with our buddy Sean Flynn on a song called Metro by Twist of Nothing. Thanks for joining us. I am your host, Brian Engelman. Oh, it has been a long month. Boy, let me tell you, it's been quite a long time, but it's good to be back. Thanks for checking us out, and if you're not following us on Twitter, we're at American_media_. Search us on Facebook and like our page, The New American Media. Do that search and like us. And thanks for 60,000 video views over on youtube.com/The New American Media. Check it out. We got a pretty cool archive of shows, past shows. And a lot of those past shows have involved co-host Blake Wally. Blake and I do a radio show over on the FreedomizerRadio.com network every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday from noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Check that out on podcast and follow Blake. He's on Twitter at Eccentric99. I usually do the Monday shows whenever possible and some of the Wednesday and Thursdays. And Blake and I may have a syndicated radio deal in the works. More on that coming down the pike. But for now, we're going to welcome Blake back into the program. Blake Wally, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing well, Brian. How are you?
Living the dream. You know, what else can you say? What else can you do? I worked at a place out here in Los Angeles, one of my first jobs, and it was the line, fake it till you make it. You know, and it's like act the part. And, you know, it's like act for the job that you want. That they would say dress for the job that you want, not the job you have. Fake it until you make it. And he'd always say, are you asking me or are you telling me? Because he'd ask you stuff, and he'd be like, Tuesday? He's like, are you asking me or telling me? Do you know this information or are you guessing? So anyway, that boss is always going to stick with me. But yeah, living the dream, fake it till you make it. Good times indeed. Blake, it's time for the top story extravaganza. This is where I would cue the fanfare sound effect, except I haven't bothered to load one up. You know, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
So maybe we got to come up with something, a batch of sound effects, if you will. But hey, I wanted to get into this. You know, a lot of what we're going to get into here over the next, I don't know how long we're going to do this, but as long as we do this, a lot of it's going to be around gun control. You know, this is the new hot button issue. It's what everybody's talking about. I just kind of want to start off with The Onion, the place where I go when I need to laugh. This is out of The Onion. This is where they do their people on the street. It says, White House and NRA meet to discuss guns. A White House task force headed by Vice President Joe Biden is meeting today with a top representative of the NRA to discuss policies aimed at reducing gun violence. What do you think? Person number one says, I'm glad to hear the NRA is finally getting the opportunity to present its ideas to the government. Person number two, why are they discussing gun control when even the bumper sticker industry has concluded that guns don't kill people? And the third person, I hope they seriously consider either mental health checks or not doing anything. And it just, you know, it kind of puts it into perspective because there's so many zany ideas out there, so many strange things in this gun control conversation, Blake. I don't know where we want to pick this up because there's so much of it going on. I guess maybe Piers Morgan, huh? Because he's really been railing on this issue, and he's had a lot of guests in over the past week or so.
Yes, the bottom dweller on a bottom-dwelling news network, now, yes, floundering and dying network. Yes, so Piers tried to make himself relevant by getting some big guests on. I got to give him some kudos for that, for having the stones to bring some good gun control guests on, including, of course, yes, Alex Jones, which everybody was talking about. That was, I believe, Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. Yeah, that was a big interview. And then, of course, yes, Larry Pratt of Gun Owners of America, and then, of course, Breitbart editor and author. I don't have the name. Shapiro, Ben Shapiro, I believe.
Yeah, so, I caught some of the interview. I wanted to maybe get some of your thoughts on that because, I saw Alex. Well, you know what? Here, let me just play you a clip of some of what Alex Jones had to say when talking with Piers Morgan. We'll just play you a clip of it, and then we can discuss it because,
Sure.
I've seen
it was controversial, yes, absolutely, but we can cover that.
Right. Well, here's just a tiny snippet of what he had to say with Piers Morgan. This is Alex Jones of InfoWars and Piers Morgan of CNN talking about, well, what would happen if they try to take the guns. It's an interesting little chat. And
While the government buys 1.6 billion bullets, armored vehicles, tanks, helicopters, Predator drones, armed, now in U.S. skies, being used to arrest people in North Dakota, the Second Amendment isn't there for duck hunting. It's there to protect us from tyrannical government and street thugs. Take the women in India. Your piece earlier on CNN I was watching during Anderson Cooper's show didn't tell you that the women of India have signed giant petitions to get firearms because the police can't and won't protect them. The answer is, hey, wait a minute, I have FBI crime statistics that come out a year late, 2011. 20+% crime drop in the last 9 years. Real violent crime because more guns means less crime. Britain took the guns 15, 16 years ago, tripling of your overall violent crime. True, we have a higher gun violence level, but overall muggings, stabbings, deaths, those men raped that woman in India to death with an iron rod 4 feet long. You can't ban the iron rods. The guns, the iron rods, Piers, didn't do it. The tyrants did it. Hitler took the guns. Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. Fidel Castro took the guns. Hugo Chavez took the guns. And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street begging for them to have their guns taken. We will not relinquish them. Do you understand? And that's why you're going to fail, and the establishment knows no matter how much propaganda, the Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
So that was what I thought was the best component of the interview myself. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that was a good one. There was a lot of highlights. Alex came with a lot of energy, threw out a lot of facts and a lot of stuff. But yes, he was criticized for getting a little bit too, getting a little bit too overboard with there. And there's certainly a good case for that. But the facts don't lie. There was a lot of good points, and of course. The media, the left-wing media, of course, would like to focus on how, insane he looked, but rather than, and not actually deal with any of the information that he brought out, which was kind of comical because rather than helping their case on that, the next day they didn't have an interview. Instead, they wanted to bring up a panel to discuss the Alex Jones interview, and that in itself was pretty telling. That they didn't really have anything to say, and none of them had any credibility whatsoever, and it was actually Gloria Allred, of course, Mark Potok of the Southern Poverty Law Center. He had John Huntsman's daughter, who works for Huffington Post, who's a total phony, and then they had a sports guy, some sports clown.
Bob Costas?
No, even worse.
O.J. Simpson?
Buzz Bissinger from, I don't know if he's from the Daily Beast or BuzzFeed or one of those, but you want to debunk Alex Jones or, cover that, then you bring up these three people that have, no clue about, like, these are your experts on the Second Amendment, and they're going to debunk Alex Jones, and I don't think any of them mentioned anything about the facts. It was just about, look at this wild, crazy conspiracy guy.
Well, he continued, Piers Morgan, hammering this issue. I don't know if that's quite a pun because people say, what, are you going to ban hammers? Are you going to ban baseball bats? But he's continuing to hammer the issue. He also brought in Ben Shapiro. Well, before we talk about it, because I meant to talk with you about this on Eccentric Perspective. By the way, you can get it on iTunes. Sign up for the podcast, search Eccentric Perspective. Subscribe to that podcast, and you can get that. But I didn't have the opportunity to join you this week. And I will definitely call Piers Morgan I will take him to task for the way that he treated Larry Pratt. I believe it's Gun Owners of America. I caught that little round table. And
Yes.
Piers Morgan was over the top. He was rude. He was insulting. He didn't let Larry Pratt finish his sentences. But on the same token...
And John Lotz from the previous week as well, the author of More Guns, Less Crime.
Okay. Well, John Lott and Larry Pratt, I don't think that they got a fair shake on that show. I think it was really rude. And, you know, if you're going to debate and you're going to agree to disagree, you have to hear what the other side says. And occasionally you have to answer questions, direct questions. You can't just talk over people. And as disappointed as I was in Piers Morgan, definitely with the Larry Pratt interview, because I saw, if you could call it an interview, just a screaming session.
Yeah.
It was horrible. I like that Alex Jones got a lot of information out there and he did it quick, but I didn't love the way that he presented it. Piers Morgan came in a completely different way. It's a lot like, this whole weekend, Blake, we got the NFL playoffs. And we got teams that they're known as a running team, they're known as a defensive team, they're known as a deep threat with the offense, the wide receivers and the quarterback. A lot of deep
run and gun,
deep throws, run and shoot. Sure, fine, why not?
Shotgun.
So imagine a run and shoot team turns into ground and pound in the playoffs. They change their strategy. Well, you have to adapt. Okay, you have to adapt.
Right.
And I've seen Alex Jones. He's been on The View, and he just went a mile a minute, and he got a lot of information out there quick because it was during the Charlie Sheen thing, because Charlie was on his program, and they wanted to know what was going on, and Alex, he had a chance, and he just let everything fly, introducing people to who he is and what he was. What my thought was, aside from that 1776 comment for the first minute or two during that component, I really thought Alex just steamrolled Piers Morgan, and normally that's a good thing, but Piers wasn't acting that way, and he didn't need to. And he really kind of, I felt...
He did look a little bit scared, too, because he didn't really have anything to say, and, that was kind of an interesting thing, the way he likes to play around with the facts and not actually discuss them. And, of course, one of those major facts being that he likes to sit there and go, the gun crime rate in England is down, and there's hardly any, gun violent murders in England, and trying to compare that to the United States, when the reality is England's crime rate, their violent crime, is literally over 4 times higher per capita than it is in the United States. But his little argument that, gun crime is down, all of a sudden, that's his argument, and it doesn't even make any sense in a place where they hardly have any guns versus a place that's has heavily armed. I don't know if it's the most has like the most guns. Yes, so it's not a genuine argument to compare the two.
Well, and that's where you get that fuzzy math, if you will. You know, it's just messing with the facts, and you're trying to paint a picture that's possibly partially accurate, but when you get down to it, if you're not comparing apples to apples, you have a situation where it's kind of a false narrative, and you're making a point that doesn't really hold water if you break it down. There was an episode of The Simpsons, and this is for some reason going to be a theme today. And I think we have the correct one, the correct quote pulled up here. We're getting it queued up, but there's an episode where Homer becomes head of a vigilante group, and his job is to lower crime, and his job is to his job. He basically becomes like the Batman. He becomes the vigilante, if you will. Okay. And in this episode, Homer's on a talk show, kind of like a Piers Morgan. It's Kent Bruckman, and he's talking about how to deal with statistics, because what happens is they recruit. Mr. Simpson, how do you hang on, let me back this up. They recruit this young street thug. I don't know if it's Jimbo or Kearney, but they recruit this kid that does, I don't know, little crime, little tedious crimes. Such as heavy sack beatings. He'll fill a sack with doorknobs and beat people with them. And so this kid joins the vigilante group, and it skewers the crime statistics. Let me just reset this here. I hope this makes sense, but it's a hilarious part.
You respond to the charge that petty vandalism, such as graffiti, is down 80%. while heavy sack beatings are up a shocking 900%.
Oh, people can come up with statistics to prove anything, Kent. 40% of all people know that.
Touche.
Right.
You know, and you play that game back and forth about the violent crime rate. And you know what? God made man and Colt made man equal. That was I think the rallying cry, one of the slogans of Colt, the Colt manufacturer of the firearm back in a couple hundred years ago in the Wild West, you know, where any enfeebled person could now defend themselves against anything, whether it's a bear, a global tyrant, or somebody trying to rob them or murder them, or worse, you know, whatever's worse than that. So, you know, I don't know where I'm going with this other than, you blur statistics and it gets dangerous.
It is very dangerous, and that's exactly what the left is doing. And it is, and you got some foreign tabloid journalist lecturing, you know, our country and trying to, you know, and talking bad about the Second Amendment and saying we basically got to, you know, ban all this stuff and get rid of it because he's so concerned about our children. When the facts show that his country has 4 times the violent crime rate and no guns. And it's just making the argument, but yet they want to sit there and play around. Well, technically, their gun crime statistics are far lower. Well, that's because you guys don't have any guns. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and you're basically, you know, feeding all this information, these supposed facts to your audience, and it's dangerously misleading. And that's why they had the petition in the first place, because that's getting into like subversion of the Constitution with foreign agents. And you got, you know, Fareed Zakaria saying some similar things this morning in the news I got today as well on that. Another CNN contributor, another foreign journalist talking about, you know, gun banning. But anyway.
Well, let's get into it, because the Alex Jones thing, like I said, I think he could have actually stood. I think
a fair criticism.
I think it was possible for him to calm down a little bit and still talk fast and not have to just bark over top of him. I know where he was trying to bust him. You try to use these tiny little facts. You try to zero in on one of these little micro facts and steer us away from the real issue. And he kept going back to it, and he did pepper him with a lot of information. And for a lot of people, that put it this way: the average CNN watcher, the average CNN viewer, may have never heard of Alex Jones. And so he only had a limited amount of time to get his information out there. And I get that. Except for me, I think having a gun control debate with someone like, I don't know, you know, Penn Jillette, or you have someone like Ted Nugent, you know, who's served out, I believe, served on the board.
Ted Nugent is if they're going to rip on Alex, no, Ted Nugent is a loose cannon who has no credibility with the left whatsoever. They're going to tune everything out, and he's probably going to put his foot in his mouth at some point. No, so but you could make an argument that Alex Jones came off a little bit Ted Nugent-ish. And rather than, you know, say the Ben Shapiro or the Larry Pratt-ish or even, you know, John Lott, who he hasn't interviewed with, but those guys are a lot more, you know, calm and soft-spoken and, you know, just bring out the facts and have a different style, yes. But Nugent has no credibility. And as far as the other thing is that you know, people are like, they're saying that, oh, like Alex let us down, and Alex was supposed to do this, and he should have been more calm, and this and that. And it's not like we all got together and elected, you know, Alex Jones to be our leader on the Second Amendment, and he was supposed to make this, you know, great speech in front of the Supreme Court, and we were all counting on him to make this argument. Otherwise, you know, our gun control, gun control, the whole issue is hanging up there, and we're counting on Alex, and he let us all down by getting all fired up. But I mean, good God, it was the Piers Morgan show, and then you think about. You know, Piers. I mean, if they really wanted to, you know, take Alex out, I mean, they really could have, you know, brought in some intelligent people the next day to destroy Alex Jones. But instead, they bring up Gloria Allred, Buzz Bissinger, and Abby Huntsman, and they just made themselves look foolish in that regard too. So even if they had the opportunity, they lost it. They lost all their credibility either way. So it didn't matter.
Well,
but yeah.
Well, you think about it, and what Piers Morgan has done, he's made himself relevant. You know, I mean, he's been sitting there on that show.
For a couple days, yeah. For a week.
For a couple of days, for a week, perhaps.
And his ratings went up, yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, he's really been staying on top of this issue. He's really been pushing it. And, you know, we had mentioned the Ted Nugent conversation, and there was something that I saw that I want to play now. This was Ted Nugent on Piers Morgan. This is another about 91-second clip. And, you know, wouldn't it be great if nobody ever needed guns? I mean, wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't it be fantastic if it rained gold? Well, actually, that would be very heavy, and it might crush us. You know what I'm saying.
It would cause inflation anyway, Brian. Okay, I'm just kidding. But yes,
hey, you know what? That's a precursor to our $1 trillion coin conversation. I guess maybe we're jumping the gun on that just a little bit. But yeah. I want to play this for you. This is Ted Nugent talking to Piers Morgan.
Disrespect to your president. Let me put it in official CNN Piers Morgan interview terms, shall I?
Yes.
My limey friend?
Yes.
Anybody that wants to disarm me can drop dead. Anybody that wants to make me unarmed and helpless, people that want to literally create the proven places where more innocents are killed, called gun-free zones, we're going to beat you. We're going to vote you out of office or suck on my machine gun. You can take it whichever way you want.
Much as I'd love to suck on your machine gun, the whole point of your defense is that a lot of people do drop dead precisely because you are armed to the teeth, and you'd like everybody else to be.
Not true at all. Piers, people, write this down. See, you're so British.
You write this down. 80 people a day die in America from gunshots.
And 75 of them to 78 of them, statistics by the Uniform Crime Report by the FBI and the UN Study on Violent Crime, 78 of those 80 are let out of their cages by corrupt judges and prosecutors who know that recidivism is out of control, know that they'll commit the crimes again, and they let them walk through plea bargaining, early release, and program.
They still
Kiss my ass.
Yeah.
Where you have the most armed citizens in America, you have the lowest violent crime rate. Where you have the worst gun control, you have the highest crime rate. Piers, choose one. Do you want a lot of crime? We have it. Gun-free zones. Do you want less crime? We have that. More people with concealed weapons permit. Why do you guys resist that statistic?
So, yes, he does say kiss my ass and suck on my machine gun.
Suck on my machine gun, yes.
I know.
I mean, that kills his credibility, and he's never going to have credibility with the left. He's already destroyed it all. That's not saying that I dislike. I appreciate his opinion. He does say some interesting things, but... you know, I guess he's an easy target for the left to go after. So I don't, you know, comparing that to Alex Jones is way different. And Alex Jones really brought the facts out. He didn't say anything about, you know, sucking on my machine gun or kiss my ass. I mean, that's a lot worse to me.
So what did you think about when Ben Shapiro went on Piers Morgan? Because this is really just an ongoing debate. It doesn't seem like it's going to stop. How did you feel he did?
I didn't. Okay, I wasn't familiar with Ben Shapiro as a person speaking, and at first I was kind of like, oh, this guy is going to be kind of wimpy. Maybe Piers brought him on as kind of a pushover. But after a few minutes in, it started to become very obvious that Ben Shapiro was in charge. He absolutely destroyed Piers Morgan in that debate, and you could really tell in those last few minutes that Piers Morgan was completely rattled. He had nothing to say. He got desperate and went for this whole stupid Ronald Reagan thing, like that was going to suddenly turn the tables on Ben, and Ben just sat there with a big smile on his face and was very calm and cool and collected and absolutely crushed him. It was brilliant. It was awesome.
So you would recommend that we check out the Ben Shapiro interview?
If anything, if you're going to check out any of those debates, I mean, the Larry Pratt ones are fantastic. Of course, the Alex Jones one is about as entertaining as you can get and full of facts, too. And you notice that Piers Morgan and even his panel the next day would carefully not talk about any of the facts that Alex brought up. And then, of course, the Ben Shapiro one was absolutely epic. Because you can clearly see that they turned the tide and that there was absolutely no argument for Piers Morgan. absolutely looked defeated and desperate and couldn't say anything.
Well, Ben Shapiro, talking with Piers Morgan, I want to play you just a couple of seconds of what he had to say because, we're trying to find articulate people that can explain why the Second Amendment is important. It was a different time in 1776 when a revolution was fought, and the second most important thing that the founders had in mind was making sure that you always had the opportunity to defend yourself against bad people. So here's a couple of seconds with Ben Shapiro talking with Piers Morgan.
Guns. My next guest has strong words for me. He says, I'm off the rails on guns in America. Ben Shapiro is editor-at-large at Breitbart.com and the author of Bullies, How the Left's Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silences America. So why am I off the rails, Mr. Shapiro?
Honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
Well, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly. What you do, and I've seen you do it on the program, is you keep saying to folks that if they disagree with you politically, then somehow this is a violation of what happened in Sandy Hook. And I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. If you want to do what you did in the UK, right, which is ban virtually all guns, that is at least a fair argument. And we can have a discussion about whether that's something that we ought to do or not.
I made it very clear what I want to do, which is exactly what Mark Kelly wants to do. And in fact, rather than address your comments to me about standing on the graves of children at Sandy Hook, you can address them to Mark Kelly, because he agrees with everything that I've been saying, because he feels the same way, as does his wife. They're gun owners. They both respect the Second Amendment of the Constitution. They don't want to take away anybody's right to defend themselves with guns.
Well, they want to take away certain types of guns, obviously.
They want to take away assault weapons, which are capable, with magazines like we saw at Aurora and Sandy Hook, of unleashing a ridiculous amount of...
Well, this is a question I wanted to ask you, Piers, because I've seen you talk about assault weapons a lot, and I've seen Mark Kelly talk about assault weapons. The vast majority of murders in this country that are committed with guns are not committed with assault weapons, they're committed with handguns. Okay, so are you willing to ban handguns in this country across the country?
No, that's not what I'm asking for.
Why not?
Let me ask you...
Don't you care about the kids who are being killed in Chicago as much as the kids in Sandy Hook?
Yes, I do.
Then why don't you care about banning the handguns in Chicago?
We'll come to that. Let me ask you this.
Okay, I think that's about enough. He's really already dodging the question. I am instantly a fan.
Yeah, everyone needs to go listen to that interview, and you can watch how he just exposes Piers, who's basically just a propaganda spewer for the establishment who wants to ban guns. And he really gets exposed and looks ridiculous. You just can't have a common sense argument and really go over the facts and without realizing that the whole gun control argument from the left is just absolutely transparent and ridiculous. It makes no sense on any level, and yet they just fanatically want to do something.
Well, let's bounce around a little bit here, because we got a lot of stories to talk about, and obviously we needed to spend some more time on that because it's the second most important thing in our Bill of Rights, and there's a reason it's number 2, because it protects your number 1 right, which is freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. You can't protect yourself from those things unless you can defend yourself and equalize yourself against someone stronger with more dangerous firepower, which is why it's there in the first place. But there's a lot of stuff we want to get to. We want to bounce around a little bit because anyone that listens to your show, anyone that listens to our show over here, we're very pro-Second Amendment. We're very anti-homicide and murder and genocide and stuff, which is why we're pro-Second Amendment. So,
don't get me wrong. I don't like guns. They're just a part of our society, and unfortunately that's kind of like that necessary part. So, I have a lot of respect for the Second Amendment, and a lot of what Ben Shapiro is going to get into later is the whole idea of why we have the Second Amendment and why we need assault rifles and stuff like that. And there really isn't. They want to ban assault rifles, but really, how much do they really account for the crime? only in a couple of mass shootings, and I don't think Sandy Hook, they didn't even use the assault rifle. It was supposedly still in the trunk of the car or the back seat of the car. So,
yeah, I think the coroner said that everybody was shot with a, I don't know.
I don't even like.
It's such a tough
issue,
story to get into because there are so many anomalies. There's so many conflicting stories, and if you get into some of these stories and talk about it, you're obviously crazy. You're obviously a nutter. You're obviously a conspiracy theorist. And I just want to bounce this real quick because this is a story about another. I'm doing the air quotes. It doesn't really translate well for radio unless I say air quotes. Trust me, I'm making air quotes. But just here's a story found today. RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., says a lone gunman was not solely responsible for the assassination of President Kennedy. Remember back in the day, everybody knew it was Lee Harvey Oswald. And then he was killed instantly before he could tell his story. Was he a patsy? Was there a second shooter? What about the grassy knoll? This is out of Dallas. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is convinced that a lone gunman wasn't solely responsible for the assassination of his uncle, President John F. Kennedy. Instead, his father believed the Warren Commission report was a shoddy piece of craftsmanship. Kennedy and his sister Rory spoke about their family on Friday night while being interviewed in front of an audience by Charlie Rose at the Winespear Opera House in Dallas. The event comes as a year of observances begin for the 50th anniversary of the president's death. Their uncle was killed November 22, 1963, while riding in a motorcade through Dallas. 5 years later, their father was assassinated in a Los Angeles hotel while celebrating his win in the California Democratic presidential primary. RFK Jr. said that his father spent a year trying to come to grips with his brother's death, reading the work of Greek philosophers, trying to figure out what kind of the kind of existential implications of why a just God would allow injustice to happen on the magnitude he was seeing. He goes on, the evidence at this point is, I think, very, very convincing that it was not a lone gunman, he said, but he didn't say what he believed may have happened. And you just consider whether it's Sandy Hook, whether it's an executive order to do a presidential gun grab, any of these things that you consider. We know about the Tuskegee story where syphilis was not being treated for 40 years so that they could let people die and examine corpses. We know that there are a lot of people that say the JFK shooting was not what it was said and it was a staged event. It was either allowed to happen or it was planned by different covert entities inside of a rogue and out-of-control government. Blake, and it just kind of goes to show that you really...
Yeah, do we really want to trust the government enough to give all of our guns to when they've kind of shown their track record of credibility isn't very good and that they don't really have a history of being very transparent or straightforward or honest with us? And, yeah, the JFK assassination, I think, probably over 75% of the people already know that the official story is a lot of BS. And, of course, they're supposed to release these records way back when. They still haven't. So, they're not telling us the whole truth with that. There obviously is a cover-up. And, of course, Sirhan has been mentioned, the guy who shot RFK. That whole story is not doing so well. I believe his attorneys are trying to fight and say that he's, that poor guy's been a patsy for a long time. Oswald they killed before they could let him, say his 2 cents. So yes, there's all kinds of suspicious stuff. So
well, you had a story. You had a story, something about the swearing in of the president on the next term here. Because we're talking grandiose presidents here. We're talking about John F. Kennedy. We're talking about really important, significant figures in American politics. What is this story you're finding, or what's going on with this gun confiscation mixed with the swearing-in ceremony, mixed with the Lincoln movie, and I think it's 12 Academy Award nominations. What are you finding there? Because some people are starting to kind of connect some dots and wonder out loud now about if I'll let you get to it.
Okay, well, yeah, there's something that people should probably keep in mind, now, and that's this whole. They're trying to. It seems like there might be a push to tie Obama and to make him into like the next Lincoln, which is pretty dangerous because there's between the draconian gun control bill. You got the Feinstein bill coming through the 22nd. You've got Obama and Biden talking about potential executive orders about getting rid of the Second Amendment. You've got a secession movement brewing with states saying, we've had enough of the federal government. It's time to secede from the Union, and then we can kind of drop this corruption, drop this whole all the federal shenanigans, and then kind of reinvent the United States and the Republic again, take it all back. And then you've got this push for Lincoln. You've got Obama's going to be delivering the State of the Union on Lincoln's birthday. He's also going to be doing his inauguration where he's going to be swearing on the Lincoln Bible. Yes, you just had your Lincoln movie, a couple of Lincoln movies. And so, of course, you got your, back in 1861 or what have you, where Lincoln took on, executive, he took on more power than just about any president ever to try to keep the Union together, to keep the South from seceding, gun control, going after journalists. There was a lot of bad things that went, with a lot of good things that Lincoln did, there's also some kind of disturbing things. And they could be causing some sort of a rift or a civil war. And then you look at all the disingenuous facts and that the left is trying to do with this whole gun control argument. There could be some dangerous things brewing over the next few weeks as these people, these aristocrats, and these unpopular politicians are losing their power. The media is dying. They're losing their credibility. Seeing New York Times and Times Magazine, are going to be cutting staff. We got, CNN is on life support. MSNBC, people aren't even tuning in. It's becoming a joke. You've got a lot of dangerous things brewing together into that perfect storm, which could happen. And so we don't want to see a civil war. We just want to have a rational discussion on all the issues. Of course, what else you got? You got Al Sharpton talking about should Obama be ready for Mount Rushmore? Lincoln is on Mount Rushmore. I mean, they're starting to brew this whole story, and it could be this whole last-ditch effort to regain control, because if the federal government ever gets its hands on the Second Amendment and gets that control, then you're talking about a checkmate virtually, because then it doesn't matter how many years. It doesn't. If they ever get some kind of a gun control thing, then the people could never rise up and potentially overthrow the government or secede or any of that stuff. And that's where you get into some dangerous stuff.
See, but I don't think it's necessarily about overthrow as much as restore. Yes, exactly. It's like, look, if Tim Donaghy is rigging basketball games when he's an NBA referee, okay, he was busted rigging games to do point shaving so that certain gamblers could place a large sum of money on certain games and they could make sure it's within 7 points or the team doesn't win by more than 10. There's little ways you can control a game and you can rig the outcome. When it was discovered that Tim Donaghy was doing that, they removed him to restore the rules of the game. And I saw something else on CNN. What's that blonde girl's name? I don't know. Whatever the case. See, and that's how popular their network is. That one girl.
I know Soledad and Aaron Burnett. I don't know.
No, it wasn't either of them, and it wasn't the vampire. It wasn't Anderson Cooper. But anyway, and she was talking with this gentleman. He served in the military and talking about registering firearms. And this gentleman, I just watched a clip yesterday, and he said, I will not be registering firearms. Well, that if this passes in California, you'll be violating the law. And he said, ma'am, an unconstitutional law is not a law. Right. And that's kind of where the discussion needs to kind of focus on. What does the Second Amendment mean? How far shall not be infringed? Shall not be infringed.
No,
exactly. But I just wanted to ask you this: Are you saying then, with all these comparisons between President Obama and Abraham Lincoln, they're both from Illinois, right? Or at least spent a lot of time and served in Illinois.
Obama spent a lot of time in Illinois.
Okay, we're not going to talk about Kenya or Hawaii or wherever the heck we think he's from. And I think Lincoln's technically from somewhere else, but then he served in Illinois when he moved.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he's Illinois for all intents and purposes.
So
they're trying to build a story.
So if you're putting them together, are you saying that it is possible that Barack Obama might be a vampire hunter? Is that what you're getting at? That John Boehner might be a vampire, and this is kind of a pseudo
You know
game?
what? If Think Progress said that Obama was a vampire hunter, I bet the readers would probably believe it. They would take everything and take it literally. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole Mount Rushmore thing, really? I don't know. Is Mount Rushmore just for 4 people, or is it...
Well, apparently Obama's done so many great things over the last 4 years that he deserves a spot.
Ooh, you know what? You know what? They could put him on Mount Rushmore. They could carve his likeness in Mount Rushmore, but you may not be able to see it because it will be the most transparent carving on the side of Mount Rushmore. You would be able to see right through it, and you just have the regular facade. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about this a little bit, because the $1 trillion coin, this is something that just really cracks me up, a little bit more so than Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
You want to segue there, or you want to segue into the other issue with the birth thing? We can get to that.
Which
too.
Other issue? There's so many. Go ahead. Go to yours, and then we'll get to this.
That was one of the ones that you tweeted out. Was was with the birther thing and the latest little controversy with Donald Trump and the $5 million question.
Oh, okay. So we'll go from the $5 million question to the $1 trillion coin. Okay, I see what you're doing there. You're going up in increments of.
Because that was on the Twitter thing. Yes, that was on the agenda today.
Okay, well, let's talk about it.
Which can be a minor blurb. All right, yes, we did mention whether Obama is from Kenya or from Hawaii. The fact is we don't really know either way, but I find it ironic that he can't ever put the birth certificate, the legitimate one, and of course Donald Trump called him out a few months ago on that, and just to say, hey, give you $5 million for whatever charity you want to do,
Hang on a second, Blake. Hang on a second. We are having a bit of a glitch here. We're going to try to bring you back in. That was pretty sweet. I think a vampire hunter was getting into the lines, trying to disturb your audio signal.
All right.
Yeah, I think a vampire hunter was infiltrating the airwaves to kind of come at you. Either that or the NSA, or so be it. But anyway, we were just let's reset it. Let's reset it because Donald Trump was one of the most prominent, loudest speaking air quote birthers, just kind of trying to question what was going on with all of that. And so he offered what was the deal? He offered a sum of money if he could prove or provide XYZ. Information
$5 million to any charity that Obama wanted, just by producing, I believe it was his student records or his, and then his or transcripts or whatever, and also his passport records. But either way, I mean, of course, the birth certificate, we still don't know what's going on with that. So that was like, I don't know.
Well, clearly the science, clearly Blake.
October.
Clearly, Blake, the science has been settled on the birth certificate. They put up an altered copy of a digital PDF on the whitehouse.gov webpage, and it's a certificate of live birth, which is different than a birth certificate, and therefore there's nothing to see here go on. Right?
Right. So, yes, and of course you got the all kinds of different investigations. So basically we can narrow it down to one of two possibilities. Number one, that he wasn't born here, he was born in Kenya. I don't believe that one. I did for a while until I watched a movie that people can probably get on instant Netflix right now called Dreams from My Real Father, as opposed to Dreams from My Father, the Obama book, here's an interesting thing to notice, that in Obama's book, there are 22 mentions of a man named Frank in his book, who was a mentor of his growing up. But when he does the audiobook version, of which he narrates, and I believe won a Grammy for, all 22 mentions of Frank are omitted. He doesn't mention it. Who the Frank is, people are suspecting that he actually was born in Hawaii, but his real father was actually Frank Marshall Davis, a well-known communist.
Maybe.
And then, of course, you've got Obama's ties to the Weather Underground, Bill Ayers in Chicago, the radical Marxist you can kind of tie all that stuff together and paint a different picture of Obama. Or you can believe that his hot white mom from Kansas hooked up with the smiley goat herder foreign exchange student from Africa, Barack Obama, back in the 60s, which doesn't really seem very likely, and that was kind of used as a cover story, and that's what they don't want you to know. Because either way, you're going to find either he's a foreign-born foreign student who's not eligible to be president, and therefore everything he's ever done is null and void, or you can find the uncomfortable truth that he was born in Hawaii, but his dad was a well-known communist.
Wow.
Odd.
And I've watched this, but you were talking about all the omissions of the word Frank. I think you said 22 times. Do you think it's possible that Barack Obama is therefore Barack Obama Frankenstein hunter? Is this possible? I'm trying to connect the dots here. Look, I'm going down the rabbit hole, Blake. It gets crazy when you get into the real truth.
It does get crazy that we get into this stuff. And how does this even happen to begin with? How do we not know who this guy is? And of course, there's a Supreme. I think this birther case might even be going to the Supreme Court as well. It hasn't really been mentioned much. I saw a Susan Posel article, I believe, out of OccupyCorporatism.com that makes some pretty interesting some statements on there on that issue as well. But either way, we want to know, why is this guy so mysterious? Why can't we get his true history? What's the deal with his Social Security number, and student records, and everything? It goes on.
I can tell you that at one point in another Simpsons episode, somebody confronts Homer and says, "It says here in your permanent record that at one time in third grade you held up your dog by its hind legs and pushed it around the living room like a vacuum cleaner." Well, that was in the third grade. Your permanent record says everything. I can tell you that at one point Mitt Romney put his dog carrier on top of his car to drive over to another location. I can tell you about the transport of a canine in the Mitt Romney family, but I can't tell you what happened in the transcripts of our president when he was in college. And there is so much, and I don't mean deceptive. Well, I mean it's shady. No, it's you can't see the truth of it.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to talk about this stuff because if it becomes an issue, then it's up to the press to vet it out and to
good luck.
Either prove it or debunk it. Either way, they're not doing that.
Well, here's what I want to do. Talking about the press, I want to get to what Hannity, Levin, and Savage are saying because you see some of more of the mainstays. I guess Savage is out there, and Levin is one of your favorites, not in Hannity. You love his hair, but you think he's a robot under there, and you don't like his brand of robot. But anyway, I want to get to that because even some of these mainstream kind of air quote people with Levin and Savage, they're starting to get into a different place. But let's wrap up the Mahr and Donald Trump thing. So Donald Trump offered $5 million to charity if he could get the transcript to Occidental and when he
Harvard, Columbia,
whatever. And so he never ponied up, and the charities never got
the press
$5 million.
Yes, they totally threw it under the rug.
Okay.
They pretended like it didn't happen, and then they just attacked Donald Trump for, why is he doing this?
Hang on, Blake. Are you saying threw it under the rug, making reference to Donald Trump's hair? Because I think that's a pretty low blow. Pretty low blow.
Well, yes, no, that's a good one, Brian. Yes. So anyway, that just got buried. And then, of course, 4 months later, we got Bill Maher, who used to be the absolute cutting edge of, political philosophy or whatever you want to call it.
Kind of like a George Carlin. He was in the same category. George Carlin, Chris Rock, kind of,
Lewis Black,
edgy. Lewis Black, right.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Some of these comics that do, tell it like it is and stuff like that. That's what made Bill Maher what launched his career.
Or Bill Hicks.
But now he's it's like he's 3-4 months behind. He doesn't know the issues anymore. And every time he's got to do sound bites, he's, bringing up 4-month-old topics like, going after Sarah Palin, who why do we, what is he going to do next? Come up with Rick Santorum jokes, But the thing is,
but we are. But hold on. But you and I are legit. We have to call out that we are just talking about the birth certificate issues, and that's about 5 years old. So.
Right. Sorry, let me get back to that. So so he's bringing up this Donald Trump thing, which happened like in October, I think, and he was just on the Jay Leno show last week. Like, we've all long forgotten about this whole Donald Trump little $5 million challenge, but somehow that's still relevant in his mind, and he brings it up like it just happened, like it's a current event. And of course, he calls out Donald Trump for, hey, let's I'll offer you $5 million if you can prove that you're not the, I believe it's that his mom had sex with an orangutan or something like that, like to prove that you're not the, whatever, I forget exactly the words to it. I can probably pull that up.
Well, you're saying
Trump
that he's doing very dated material. It's like, hey, folks, did you hear about the sinking of the Lusitania? Hey, let me tell you about the sinking of the Lusitania. Hey, those dirigibles, man, can they go any slower? Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, why bring up, with Sarah Palin and Donald Trump? I mean, can't you think of better material, a little hard-hitting, more current event type of material
Maybe
and bigger
not.
Targets? I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, you make this joke in October or November. You don't make it 4 months later or whatever, 3 months later. I mean, that just shows you where Bill Maher is at.
And so he says he makes the boast. I'll give Donald Trump $5 million if he can prove that he's not the son of an orangutan.
Right, pretty much. And so Donald Trump called him out on it and showed him his birth certificate. And it says not the spawn of his mother having sex with an orangutan.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, so Donald Trump got his lawyers out and penned it up and brought out his birth certificate. So he's clearly born in 1946 in Queens, New York, and hey, now he wants his money. Pay up, sucker. So I thought it was awesome because I ripped on Obama. Like, if Obama has nothing to hide, then why can't he just pull out a stupid birth certificate and prove it once and for all and get $5 million of Donald Trump's money? How awesome would that be? And then give it to charity and make himself look awesome and make Donald Trump look like a big jerk off. But no, it shows you how ridiculous this whole thing is. That even for $5 million, the guy can't show his documents, which just proves that he's illegitimate and that the media is actually covering for him. It's ridiculous.
Well, if you had $5 million bucks, you could go on a whistle-stop tour of the nation, go to the areas affected by Hurricane Sandy, and throw $100 bills out the window. Donald Trump's money, everybody! Donald Trump's money.
The publicity would have been amazing.
Come on, step on up and collect Donald Trump's $100 bill. $100 bill for anyone affected by Hurricane Sandy. I could hear it now. I could hear him barking on the boardwalk. I could see Chris Christie eating some cotton candy. Step right up. Get your Donald Trump $100 bill. But I don't know. It seems like that would be a pretty genuine thing to do. That'd be pretty sweet. But
it would have been a great story.
It's all gamesmanship. It's all political gamesmanship, and if he doesn't have to, and there was the same thing with Romney's tax returns. Well, why doesn't he release 10 years of tax returns? Why doesn't he release 15? Why doesn't he release 20? And it's like it's like I don't even know what classes our president took in college. We don't know what about when Eric Holder was in college that they were part of taking over one of the ROTC units on campus as part of a demonstration linked to the Black Panthers, but you've never heard about that before. Only recently are you finding out where Eric Holder's on camera on CNN talking about brainwashing people against guns. That's the top cop in the land. And it's just the average CNN viewer doesn't know these things because they live in a bubble and they think that's all there is. It's just like I said on when I got to talk with John B. Wells on Coast to Coast. I said, I grew up, I used to think Fox News was the news. A lot of my liberal friends used to grow up thinking MSNBC was the news. It's not. They're both corrupt. They're both just trying to earn their buck. It is what it is, and the truth is somewhere in between. And if you limit yourself to one option of news, and don't just listen to us. Actually, for advertisers out there, definitely just listen to us. Blake Walley and Brian Engelman on thenewamericanmedia.com and eccentricperspective.com. But, you got to have a wide variety of information to just consider it. You dig into issues, and sometimes you don't know what's true, and sometimes it brings up more questions than you have answers, and that's okay because you're seeking truth and you're challenging dogma, and you try to have fun during the process. It is a process.
Right, and this, it's important to get these information and to call them both out and to look objectively at all sides of the media and look at the full spectrum and see where does the truth lie. and in between or what have you. But I found it. I find it a little scary and crazy when, even when, say, Fox News, which I usually think is, full of it, and sometimes when they even tell the truth on certain issues, they get no credibility. The so-called liberal media, or the people that believe in the liberal media, won't even listen to anything. And they can be just dangerously misled with stuff, and I'm seeing a lot of this with this whole gun control debate, and people aren't getting the real issues. They're dangerously misinformed. And these are the people that might be, calling to get rid of the Second Amendment when they don't even know all the facts.
Yeah, they don't know what the founding of this country is about. Feinstein responded to that person on CNN, and I should have the article pulled up. Matt Larson is the gentleman's name. He sent that out on YouTube recently. He uploaded something, and Dianne Feinstein actually responded and said, yeah, and these bills will not be retroactive and this and that, and we will allow for sports shooting and hunting. And the guy says the Second Amendment has nothing to do with sports hunting, sports shooting or hunting. So I don't understand what she's talking about. That has nothing to do with the intent of the Second Amendment. But hey, let's bounce to this real quick. Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and Mark Savage, because you're seeing that some of the talking heads out there. And by the way, we'll keep our fingers crossed.
People I usually don't like. People I'm usually highly critical of.
I was just going to say, we'll keep our fingers crossed to see if Bill Maher pays up the $5 million. Because didn't he already give $1 million to the Barack Obama for 2012 re-election campaign?
Yes,
I think that was
the so-called libertarian who gave $1 million to Barack Obama. Not, a 2008 thing when maybe you have an excuse. But, I mean, actually, after 4 years of
zero budgets being passed.
BS and junk, and yes, he gives $1 million.
No budgets being passed. Fast and Furious, Benghazi, the National Defense Authorization Act. Let's go down the laundry list of achievements of this president.
Yeah, exactly. And the lack of the economy turnaround. No,
what was it? $9 trillion when he took over to $16 trillion now. That's $7 trillion, something like that.
What did he say about how un-American it was to add that much to the debt?
It's unpatriotic. It's unpatriotic to pass along that much debt to your children, and he is just far surpassing the yearly amount of
in
deficit.
Just 4 years.
Yeah, but don't worry. We have no intention of cutting anything. We just want to tax everybody a little bit more. We want to take over the healthcare industry and make sure that nobody can live or die without going through the government. In case they ration it, let's just make sure that the right people get coverage first in the triage system. Our friends and allies who are linked up on Twitter and Facebook, and the people that have used the right keywords versus the wrong keywords, have the right friends instead of the wrong friends. Maybe there's just an algorithm that's created by, I don't know, maybe a Mark Zuckerberg type that identifies who gets service first and who doesn't, because there's just not enough money to go around. And gosh darn it, we just need more equity in this system. It just needs to be more fair, because our system is unfair, and it needs to be fundamentally transformed, right? Yeah, I know. I know. It just goes on, which is why I can only handle so much of it. But I want to get to the Hannity, Levin, and Savage, because it seems like they've kind of reached a point where they've had enough of it, and they're starting to kind of change their tune and maybe whistle a different tune, if you will. They're bringing out some different material. I know you found something on that and wanted to share it with us.
Yeah, perhaps. And, of course, I've been extremely critical of these guys. I don't play the left and right game. And, of course, I was highly critical of all, Hannity, Levin, and Savage for pushing Mitt Romney as the candidate over Ron Paul. I was disgusted with that. And I would be absolutely blasting these guys on a daily basis had Mitt Romney actually won the election, and they were defending him when he was going to be, putting the same, horrible Bush policies back into place. I would be their biggest critic. But I think now they're maybe starting to really freak out and watching this, this gun ban go through, or there's all this kind of, crazy stuff going on, and they seem to be kind of fighting back a little bit here, or a lot, which is interesting to note. And, of course, I've said these guys are all bought and paid for by Clear Channel or what have you, or, Fox News. But let me get to this just to give a little kudos here. Hannity is saying the United States may fall apart if tax rates remain high. And he's saying the states are now fighting and battling against their own federal government, Hannity said. Same thing with individuals. If you live in a state like New York, New Jersey, California, or one of these high tax states where 60+ cents of every dollar goes to taxes, you'll say, what the hell am I doing this for? And a lot of people have told me that, Hannity continued. A lot of people are moving. Let's see here. A lot of people are moving to Louisiana, Texas, Florida. Their populations are soaring. People are moving out of New York. People are fed up with power-hungry, radicalized, abusive federal government intruding into every aspect of our lives. People are going to say they're fed up, and states are going to want more liberty and more freedom. They're not going to want to tax their citizens to death anymore. And if this pattern continues and gets worse and worse and worse, I see at some point the state saying, forget it. I don't want to be a part of this union anymore. So this is, and just last one more thing. Hannity rejected the idea that secession is not necessarily a radical concept, arguing that the Declaration of Independence is itself a radical document. So those are pretty important words coming out of, Sean Hannity, going against the federal government and saying, there might be something to this secession thing.
The Constitution,
we're getting taxed too much.
The Declaration of Independence is a secessionist document. It's seceding from England. It's declaring their independence from an overbearing, overreaching, abusive federal government ruling class of oligarchs who don't represent the will of the people. And the will of the people is sovereign, and it trumps the needs of a king or some potentate or some sort of ruling leader, the oligarchy, the established ruling class, the 1%, if you will. The people say, I am not playing in that system anymore. And that's what the Declaration of Independence is. It's declaring independence from garbage. You want to tax yourself, you want to do this and that, you want to go into foreign wars all over the country, you do it on your own, we're out. That's what the document is. It's a secessionist document.
Right, and that ties into this whole kind of potentially scary Obama's going to be the next Lincoln, and we're going to have a civil war, and it's going to be, I don't even want to get into that and think about stuff like that, and it's just because there's not enough dialogue, there's not enough information. For us to actually have this debate, and things are getting really divided. So it is a little bit, it's very concerning. But anyway, just to get into a little bit of the Mark Levin, should I do his voice here? No discussion on the news programs about an imperial president exercising an authority he does not have under our Constitution. Nothing. No discussions about all the lives saved and all the people protected as a result of the Second Amendment. Nothing. They continue to perpetuate the lie, the big lie, that somehow some new regulation, some new government fiat would have prevented what happened in Newtown, Connecticut. So,
very good.
Yeah,
Wait,
that was, I can't stand.
That was very good. I always love your impressions. We got to do more of those. Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
But you're normally not a fan of this guy.
No, he's a very angry neocon and said a lot of bad things about Ron Paul, and he pushed Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney to win the election when we could have turned this whole thing around with Ron Paul. Anyway, I have a lot of problems with these guys, but right now, as things are getting really pretty scary going on, and with this next month of all these, dangerous gun bills and stuff, you're starting to see these guys starting to maybe get it a little bit and start to get a little bit panicked. Like, do we really want to go down this road where we're going to disarm the American people, where the taxes are going to continue to go up, the austerity, potential economic collapse? Who knows? And we got to say, okay, enough is enough. We got to draw our line in the sand before things get any worse. And let's not make this all over, a tragedy, a shooting, and then we're going to, go down this road. So it's nice to see that. Now, Michael Savage, I don't really have a lot of quotes here, but he's also talking about calling for a nationalist third party to challenge the GOP. So anyway, but yes, there is a fight back. There's a push back.
Well, I don't really know why we would need a third party when, for the past 100 years, we've had pretty much the same two-party ruling system. And as you rack up huge amounts of debt, you got to add some revenue, you got to cut some spending, tighten the pocketbook like you do when you're in college, or you're just getting out on your own. You can't really have a fancy car and fancy clothes and go out to eat. You're just on a shoestring budget and eating ramen noodles. I don't know why we need a third party when we have such brilliant ideas like the $1 trillion coin, Blake. I want to bring this to you. This is out of the WashingtonPost.com. The $1 trillion coin is emerging as a surprisingly serious proposal by the political left to avoid the looming fight over the debt ceiling. Yeah. It's also the political equivalent of the nuclear option, something that may be technically practical, but would lead to all kinds of unpredictable political fallout. So much so that it's very likely to remain in the realm of liberal fantasy. Liberal fantasy. Is that redundant, or is that... I don't know. I mean, Blake, just for a second, talk about the concept of just, we're in debt $16 trillion. Let's make $17 trillion coins. That'll fix things.
Well, you know what? I think I've seen a couple of people. I think one of them, Jon Stewart, who just says, just to show how ridiculous it is. Why not just make a $16 trillion coin and just get rid of the entire debt? It's absolutely ridiculous. They're out of ideas. The whole fiscal cliff thing, all they did was kick the can down the road for a few months. They have no solutions to anything, and that could be a reason why they want to disarm the American population, because if there is an economic collapse,
Hang on, I think we lost Blake one more time. This is just fantastic. When you start talking about economic collapse and serious things like this, you tend to have goofy little technical glitches, and that's exactly what we've had. But we're pretty much starting to wrap things up there anyhow. It's just, Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert are going to give you better news than you're going to get sometimes on CNN and Fox. When it's all political party-based, you're not going to find anything worth watching. But, since we're having so many of these glitches here, that was 2, and it looks like everything has frozen up. I'm borrowing a line from Blake. This happens to him all the time when he does his shows. But I think that's really going to sum up where we're at and where we're going with this. I think that's a perfect jumping-off point where we can wrap this up. Blake, thank you very much for joining us. I know I'm talking to you posthumously, kind of, quasi-posthumously, since you're still with us. You're just not with us. So thank you for joining us. Make sure you check out Blake. He's on Twitter at Eccentric99. Check out his homepage, eccentricperspective.com. Check out our podcast on iTunes. Search Eccentric Perspective, and you can sign up to have that delivered to your front doorstep like some milk from the 1950s. You remember to recycle your glass bottles, of course. Thank you for listening. This has been Agree to Disagree. I'm your host, Brian Engelman. This is thenewamericanmedia.com. Please make sure that you're following us on Twitter at American_media_. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Thank you very much for our 60,000th video view. We appreciate it. We'll be posting this shortly. And make sure you search The New American Media and like our Facebook page. We appreciate it. Until next time, everybody, seeking truth, challenging dogma, having fun, thenewamericanmedia.com. Agree to Disagree. Yeah, it's a radio show we have on thenewamericanmedia.com every single Friday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Join the show. What do we talk about? Politics, religion, and spirituality. Basically anything you're not supposed to talk about in a bar. You're not supposed to have these conversations inside of a bar, but we have them every single Friday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific on thenewamericanmedia.com. Join the show, offer your opinion, and let's agree to disagree, but let's have a good conversation.